Experts want to share their knowledge with the world, but sometimes it's hard getting it down on paper because you know so much. How can you figure out what to put in, what to leave out, and how to crystallize your thoughts so that you can make an impact in the world? That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm Dan Janelle, the author of more than a dozen books, including Write Your Book in a Flash. I'm a book strategist, which means I can help you write your book as a ghostwriter, book coach, or developmental editor. Now, let's get started. Our guest today is Barbara Boyd, who's worked with more than 200 true thought leaders and experts and helped them write their books. And she's no dummy because she's written a handful of dummies books as well. So she's a writer and she's a coach and she's helped lots of people like you get thoughts out of your head and into print. Welcome, Barbara.
Hello, Dan. Thank you for having me.
I talk to many prospects who say, I have 3 books inside me and a screenplay. I'll say, okay, let's figure out where we should go first. So what are some of the mistakes that people make when getting focused? How can they focus those 3 books and a screenplay into their first book that tells the world that they're an expert who can help make the world a better place?
Great question. So the first thing that I like to ask them is why they're writing a book. What are they hoping to accomplish? And some of those reasons are practical. I want to get more clients. I want to get more speaking engagements. I want to build a platform and write articles and be recognized as an expert in my field. And others are more personal. It's just that satisfaction of writing a book. It's the idea of wanting to leave a legacy for the future in a certain field or industry. So knowing why you're writing a book, that motivation will carry you through in those dark nights of the soul, because writing a book is hard work. And the mistake I think that people make is diving in too quickly, just trying to pants their way through it, as we say in the writing industry, instead of doing a little bit of planning, thinking about their why, what are their objectives, who is the audience that they want to reach, and how does their idea meet the needs of that audience? How does that audience help them obtain their goal? And those 3 things fit together as a puzzle. If one of those pieces is out of alignment, the other 2 fall apart.
Well, definitely. I go through pretty much the same process because if they don't know why they're writing a book, they'll never finish it. I have a friend, a prospect, client, friend, whatever, and he's brilliant in his area. He says, why should I write a book? He really doesn't get it. And because he doesn't get it, he hasn't sat down to write it. So I think if you're really convinced on why you are writing this book and how it will help you and how it will transform your readers' lives, then you have that momentum to get through those inevitable high points and low points that a book coach can get you through. But it has to start with you internally. Now, we talk about pantsers now. People are probably saying, what does she mean? And I know that it's people write by the seat of their pants versus the outline. Let's talk about that for a second. How do you work with your clients to make sure that they get a good outline? Or do you let them go by the seat of their pants?
I am a planner. I think having a plan,
So am
I believe that frees you to be more creative. And that seems paradoxical, but when you know where you're going, you can then take those side trips and stop and get ice cream along the way and have fun. And you're not worried about where you're going to sleep that night. And so having that outline is a tool that actually broadens your ability to be creative. The other thing the outline does is gives you clarity. If you don't have clarity about your idea, then you just be fumbling through from the beginning to the end. I mean, clarity means knowing what your idea is about. It means knowing what that journey is that you're taking your reader on. How are they going to shift from where they are today to who they are and what they know when they've finished your book? So I like to use a tool that it's a kind of a non-traditional outline. It still has chapters and topics, but it's something that is used through Author Accelerator. I'm a certified coach through Author Accelerator. And it's called the outcome outline. And so you've got the topic of the book, but you also have what is the impact, the topic of the chapter, and then what's the outcome from that topic of the chapter? How does that lead to the next chapter? So it shows that journey that your reader will take as they're going through the book.
Interesting. An impact outline. I haven't heard of that term before.
Outcome outline.
Outcome.
Outcome outline.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. In fact, I was working with one of my clients the other day, and she had a number of bullet points. And I said, okay, these are features. What's the benefit of this? So after each of her statements, I would say, so that. And she'd say, oh, this is important so that business owners can do whatever and achieve this and whatever. And it offered so much clarity because it showed the outcome of her statements. You know, a lot of your experts know so much. How do they winnow it down to just one central idea or one theme or one group of ideas of all the many that they could have?
That goes back to this idea of clarity and the why. I often will ask them to sort of make a list of the different ideas that they have, and then think about what a reader needs to know first, and who are they trying to reach in terms of that reader. So if, let's say I'm an expert in dog training, and I work with people who have never had dogs before, and I work with people who want to have show dogs, and I also work with people, the police force. And those could be three very different books. But I have to think about who is the client that will help me grow my business most, and start there, because that's the book that's going to have the most impact. And once you have that, you can then narrow it down and think about what information should be included for that audience and what information isn't necessary. And to do that, I work with clients to come up with an avatar or an ideal reader. That doesn't mean that that's the only person who will read their book, but again, it gives them clarity. And paradoxically, having that clarity about that one focused reader actually makes the book have a broader reach at the end of the day, because it's clear and succinct.
Yeah, you sort of preempted my next question, which is how much detail should an expert give? I worked with one client who was talking about the theory of flow. And maybe 20 years ago, you need to explain what flow was in 3 or 4 pages and the psychological ramifications and the proof that it exists and blah, 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 which he did. And I said, no, we don't need to know that anymore. Flow is just like you're in the flow and time passes and you don't even notice it. And we fought on that, and I lost because he wanted to show the world how smart he was. And okay, he won. But how do you work with your clients when they have that level of detail issue? Do they say enough or do they say too little? How do you figure that out? Or does that go back to the avatar?
Partly it goes back to the avatar. Partly it is about setting up context. Why this book now? What does your audience know? That, of course, does go back to the avatar. If you are writing an academic work, then probably you do want more of that preparation, for example, in your flow example. But people today have a certain level of experience, and they also have a limited amount of time. So you don't want to lose them. I mean, you need to get to your point. I had an experience with I have a gentleman, I've done 3 books with him, and he was writing about his early work experiences for people who hadn't gone to college, and he's kind of a self-made entrepreneur. And he got on the phone and he told me this great story, and he was like, oh, I really want to tell this story. And it was about like a coworker. And I said, that's a great story, but it's not your story to tell. And so I'm pretty honest about telling them, I'm not pretty honest, I am honest to tell them, I don't think this belongs. It is your decision, but here's why it doesn't belong. And I think that's the advantage of having a book coach. As you know, we all have biases and blind spots, and having someone else say, wait a minute, does that meet the needs of your audience? Is that going to bore them? Are you going to lose them? Because you've got to keep your reader on every page. It's almost to the level of having to keep them from paragraph to paragraph. People don't stick around to see, is this going to get better? If they don't like it, they're going to put it aside and start scrolling on some social network. And so I think you have to make really important choices about what stays and what goes.
Excellent points. I work with my clients all the time to make sure that their stories prove their points. Because sometimes the story goes off in a different direction than they thought. It's like, good story, doesn't belong in this chapter, belongs in another chapter. Wonderful.
And I think from writing, sometimes you need to try different things. And it's not enough to talk about it. I have a client right now, and she is reticent to start working on the page. We talk a lot about her ideas, but she's not putting the words down. And I said, you've got to try it, and try a couple different ways. You can't wait until you get it right and then go and write it down. And that, because sometimes you just don't discover what your book is about until you begin writing some of those things down.
Exactly. I have that situation with my clients all the time. And the more they write, the clearer they get. And the later chapters are so much better than the first chapters, because now they're crystallized and they know what they want to say, and they have the tools, because we've been talking about tools and techniques and grammar and style and how to tell a story properly. Now they finally got it. And then that's great. We can go back to the earlier chapters and revise them, because now they know where they're going.
Exactly.
Thank you, Barbara, and thanks everyone for listening to our show today. If you want to write, publish, and market your book in a flash, we have more than 100 videos on our YouTube channel. Check them out so you can get started and work on your journey. Thanks for being with us today.